Hello everybody, CritCrab here with another story. This one is about something so stupid, so needlessly difficult that I never thought I would be able to tell a story about. A DM that openly and intentionally fudged rules, admittedly just to make things harder for the PCs. Also, I just want to say a quick hello to all of our new subscribers because we are all well on our way to 50,000 subs. So, if you're a crab or even just an ally to the crab kingdom and haven't done so already, please do vow your allegiance to crabkind by hitting the subscribe button because, hoo boy, do I have a huge surprise for you guys when we hit 50k. You're going to love it. Also, before we get into this, I would like to quickly plug today's sponsor, Last Arc Tactics Analog. More on them in the description. All that aside, roll post. A few years back, a group that I was a part of was joined by a new player. He was, shall we say, an interesting character. One of the first things he told everybody was that he was really into role-playing, and his favorite part of the game was creating deep and complex personalities for his characters. Sounded like a wonderful addition to the group. Then came the first game with him. He arrived with a whopping 2-sentence long backstory, and spent the entire game attempting to murder everything within a 5-mile radius. The only role-playing he did the entire time was his screeching that he wanted to stab something in the throat. After the game was over, he congratulated himself on his excellent role-playing and sought praise from the rest of the group for his complex character. Oh well, I've played with worse. Then, one day, he asked everybody if it would be alright if he DM'd for a while. He mentioned he had a campaign idea that he desperately wanted to try out. We all agreed, because our group tended to swap out DMs every now and then, so everyone could have a chance to play as both player and DM. The day of the DM's game came around, and we all showed up wondering what it was going to be like. DM told us that he was trying to capture the feeling of JRPGs, and that the game would more or less follow an open-world format, with dungeons and random encounters. He also said that he wanted the combat to be extremely challenging. We all thought it sounded fairly interesting, and we were on board with it. In practice, the idea was not executed very well. The entire world map pretty much consisted of a single notable city, with miles of undetailed plains in between. Most of the game was simply walking from point A to point B, with random encounters along the way. Not many interesting stories arose from it, but there was one. It was very early on in the game. We received a request from some church officials to handle a problem. Apparently, a trio of paladins had gone rogue and decided to use their influence to take whatever they wanted from the nearby villages. The church had officially excommunicated them and wanted us to go and take them permanently out of commission. We tracked down the paladins to a small farming village. They had set up a large field outside of town, and were preaching to the people about how if they wanted their souls to be saved, they should give all their worldly belongings to the paladins. On our way to the village, we heard many stories about their martial prowess, and as I mentioned earlier, the DM had told us combat would be very challenging. In addition, we were very low level at this point, and we decided that if we wanted victory, we would need to plan our attack. We set up what I felt was a fairly good plan. After the paladin's speech, they would be approached by the warlock. From observing the speech, we had learned that the paladins were trying to establish a following, so the warlock would use his high charisma to convince them that he wished to convert. While the warlock occupied the paladins with questions about their practices and such, the fighter and barbarian would make their way behind the trio, and our rogue would set up to one side. The fighter and barbarian would attack from behind. The rogue would unleash a crossfire of sneak attacks, and the warlock would turn and run, initially behaving as a fearful villager, at least until he was safely away, at which point he would turn about and unleash his spells from the rear. We put our plan into motion. The whole party was in position. The warlock managed to completely win over the paladin's trust, and they were totally convinced that he was a fanatic convert. Then, the fighter and the barbarian charged. "Okay," said the DM, "roll for initiative." We did so, and then prepared for our surprise round. It didn't come. We asked the DM why. He said if there was a surprise round, the fight would be too easy. Apparently, they heard the fighter and the barbarian charging from behind, so they drew their swords, and ran forwards, and skewered the warlock. "Wait," we all said, "they don't even know that he's a threat. They think he's a convert. He's not even wearing anything suspicious, just commoner's clothes." "True," said the DM, but he has the least health, so it makes sense that the paladins would want to kill him first. We argued that it made no sense for the paladins to ignore the threat to their backs to attack the helpless villager who was on their side, but the DM was adamant. The paladins would all attack the warlock. The fighter and barbarian ran in, and the rogue fired a shot. But without surprise on their side, the attack was somewhat sloppy. The warlock was forced to spend his turn disengaging and running for his life from the murderous paladins, so our first turn was a bust. But that's okay, because at least we've maneuvered ourselves into a tactically advantageous position. The paladins are up next. They ignore the giant screaming barbarian, the heavily armored fighter, and the shady-looking rogue attempting to pincushion them. No, they pursue the most dangerous threat on the field of battle, the warlock. The fight swiftly dissolved from a carefully crafted ambush into an annoyingly drawn-out Benny Hill chase scene. As the warlock spent his turns running in fear, the paladins ignored everything else to chase after him, and the rest of the party chased them. Finally, the DM realized that the fight had lost all interest for the players, and the paladins turned about to finally face the warriors actually attempting to murder them. So the fight has not been ideal, but now things are going to turn. The paladins have been wasting their turns chasing the warlock, but they have suffered constant attacks of opportunity from the fighter and the barbarian, so they are all slightly bloodied. The fight is about to turn in our favor, which is also something the DM realized. The paladins roll their first attacks against the fighter, and against all odds, not only do all three of them crit, but all of their crits do the maximum possible damage. The fighter calls BS on this. The DM admits that while technically all of their attacks missed, he feels like the fight would be too easy if the warriors were on full health, so he decided to give the paladin some free hits. The fighter drops down to single-digit health in a single round. In the end, we finally won the fight. It was possibly the most challenging fight I've ever been in. That much is true. Of course, it was also the least interesting, as the entire fight was a little more than a glorified chase scene. Overall, the lesson has served as a cautionary tale for me going forwards. Fights should be challenging, but they should also be logical. If a giant, half-naked barbarian screaming blood fury charges someone while swinging a great axe the size of a small tree, the person's first instinct should probably be something other than stab the defenseless citizen in front of me. Ever since then, I always make sure I can justify why any creature does anything, and it is never simply because it makes the game more challenging. End post. And rumor has it, that DM is traveling tables and ruining games to this very day. Seriously though, this guy clearly forgot the most important rule of DMing, which is that you are not the player's enemy. He seems a lot more like a wargamer or a power gamer than a DM. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Till next time.